Welcome back to Midnight Whispers. Don't forget to subscribe, turn off the lights, and let's step into something you can't unhear. I'm telling this exactly as it happened, in the same voice I used when I first called my sister from the side of that lonely highway, because even now my pulse jumps when I think of the moment my car spun out on that slick stretch of road. And I staggered out into the heavy night air thinking I'd just wait for help, only to see a crooked wooden sign pointing toward a town I swear wasn't on any map. A town whose name felt familiar in a way that shouldn't have been possible, as if it had lived inside my memories long before I saw it printed on that old sign. And as I walked down the silent two-lane road, the darkness around me felt strangely patient, like it had been expecting me. And when I crossed beneath the town's rusted archway, I felt the temperature drop so fast my breath turned white, even though it wasn't cold enough for that. And the houses lining the street looked lived in, but empty like families had just stepped out moments before leaving their curtains trembling in the draft. And when I saw the first person, a man in a flannel jacket, pushing a wheelbarrow full of tools, I waved at him and shouted for help. But he didn't even glance my way, like I was a breeze passing through him. And for a second, I honestly believed he was ignoring me, until I stepped right in front of him and watched him walk straight through me without slowing down. And the shock of that moment hit me harder than the accident had, making my knees buckle as I tried to convince myself he hadn't just phased through me like I wasn't there. And I ran to the nearest window thinking maybe the people inside could see me. But the woman at the kitchen sink never reacted, even as I pounded on the glass. And the sound of my hand hitting the window didn't seem to exist for her. And I realized then that something was deeply wrong, not just with the town, but with me. And when I turned around and saw my own name scrawled in looping, frantic handwriting across the side of a nearby building, I stumbled backward, because I had never been here before. And yet someone had written my name 20 times in thick black paint, and the sight of it filled me with a sickening certainty that this place knew me before I arrived. And as I walked farther, the streets got narrower, as if guiding me towards something I didn't want to see. And the deeper I went, the more walls I saw covered in my name, written in different sizes and strokes, as if dozens of hands had been driven to write it. And the weight of being unseen, and yet somehow obsessively known, made the air feel too thin to breathe. I kept walking, because turning back felt impossible, as if the road behind me had folded itself away, and every step echoed like I was the only living thing in miles, even though I kept passing people who moved through the streets with the calm routine of a town that had no idea I was screaming their names. And when I brushed past one of them, hoping maybe touch worked, even if sight didn't, my hand passed straight through his arm, like dipping into cold stream water. And I tried to yell louder, but my voice seemed swallowed by the air before it reached anyone. And then I noticed that the street lamps flickered each time I stepped beneath them, as if reacting to me alone, and I followed the flickers until I reached a mural on the side of a diner showing a woman standing on a road just like mine, with her face hidden by a smear of black paint, except the letters of my name curved beneath her like a label, and I felt a pull in my stomach, like the mural was remembering me, even if I couldn't remember it. And as I stepped back, I noticed movement in the diner's reflection, where my own image should have been. But instead of me, I saw the blurred outline of someone older wearing my clothes, but standing perfectly still. And I spun around hoping to see her behind me, but there was nothing but wind, and a sudden ringing filled my ears like I was standing inside a church bell. And the sound pushed me toward a narrow alley where the brick walls were plastered with torn posters, all featuring my name in faded ink, and I tried to rip one down, but it clung to the wall like it was growing out of it. And for a moment, I thought maybe I had died in that crash. And this was some kind of distorted afterplace shaped by things I never confronted. But the alley opened into a square with a fountain that was still running, even though no one seemed to notice the water. And floating in the fountain on a piece of driftwood was a piece of paper with my full name printed neatly, as if typed on a typewriter. And beneath it, a date, today's date, and the words arrival confirmed, which made something twist painfully in my chest. And the air around me shifted like the entire town released a breath it had been holding, and a sound rose from the pavement like footsteps. Only none of the townspeople were moving, and the sound circled me like an unseen presence, trying to decide what to do with the fact that I had arrived early or late, or right on time. I backed away from the fountain, clutching the paper, even though it seemed to pulse with warmth like a heartbeat. And I shouted that I wanted to leave, that I didn't belong here. But the town didn't care, because the wind picked up and carried bits of dust that scraped across my skin like messages being written too fast to read. And I realized the streets were subtly rearranging themselves, leading me toward a tall building whose boarded windows rattled every time I got closer. And despite the boards, I could feel something inside watching me with the attention of someone who had waited far too long. And I pushed the door open, even though it screeched like it didn't want to let me in. And the interior was filled with file cabinets stacked haphazardly up the walls, as if someone had been collecting lives like paperwork. And when I tugged open the nearest drawer, papers spilled out each page, repeating my name over and over in different penmanships, like different versions of me had been signing in for years. And the realization that the town wasn't ignoring me, but cataloging me, made my stomach churn. And a soft hum filled the room, vibrating through the metal cabinets like a slow exhale of relief at my presence. And I tried to run, but the floor beneath me felt like it was thickening, like it wanted to keep me a little longer. And when I finally reached the doorway again, I tripped onto the street outside, where another new message had appeared on the pavement, though I hadn't seen anyone write it, and it read, "We see what you don't," which made my breath catch, because I still couldn't understand how they saw everything except me. And the streetlights dimmed all at once, plunging the town into a twilight that didn't feel natural. And the people around me froze mid-step, like puppets waiting for a signal. And the mural on the diner shifted its paint, as if the figure within it was moving inch by inch out of the frame. And I decided, if the town could know me, then maybe I could force myself to be known back. So I screamed my name as loudly as I could, but the sound cracked like the air rejected it, and the silence that followed was so heavy it made the street seem to bend inward toward me. I ran again with no sense of direction, because every street circled into another version of the same path, as if the town was looping me through its memory. And the more I ran, the more often I saw my name written in places that hadn't been marked before, like the words were forming while I looked away. And when I turned a corner, I came face to face with a boarded up school, whose entrance had my name carved so deeply into the wood it looked like fingernails had done it. And the instant I touched the carving, I felt a jolt of recognition that wasn't mine, like a memory had brushed against me. And I pulled away, shaking, as the sound of children laughing echoed faintly, even though the building was abandoned. And their laughter wasn't playful, but knowing, like they understood why I was here when I didn't. And I pushed myself onward down the street, where the asphalt shimmered like heat waves, even though the air had grown colder, and the shimmering coalesced into shapes that looked like people made of static turning their heads toward me before dissolving into dust. And I whispered for help, even though I knew no one could hear me. And suddenly, the houses around me lit up their porch lamps, one by one, in a sequence, leading me toward a church at the end of the road. And the church door opened on its own, revealing a long aisle and a pulpit with a single book resting on it. And I walked in, unable to resist the pull of it. And when I opened the book, the pages were blank, except for the last one W, which held a single sentence written in a shaky hand, saying, "You were always meant to return." And the final word "return" had been written over so many times, the page had nearly torn, and the meaning of it made my knees weaken, as if the town was telling me that I belonged to it in some forgotten way. And I slammed the book shut, but the sound echoed far too loudly, like the building enjoyed the noise. And outside the church, the streets had gone completely empty, and the people had vanished like a curtain had dropped on a play, leaving only the marks of my name glowing faintly in the fading daylight. I stepped back into the empty street, wishing for just one person to see me, even if only for a second, because the loneliness of being surrounded by life that couldn't acknowledge me was worse than the crash, and the silence made my thoughts too loud, until I felt the sensation of someone standing directly behind me, even though no shadow touched the ground, and I felt warm breath brush my ear, and a voice that sounded exactly like mine told me, "You're late." And I spun around terrified, but there was nothing behind me except the faint ripple of air that suggested someone had been there, and the walls beside me began forming new letters, as if invisible hands were scrawling fresh warnings or welcomes I couldn't interpret, and I didn't know whether they were trying to trap me or guide me. But the words kept forming faster than I could read, and they led me toward a cul-de-sac where a small house sat with its porch light buzzing like it recognized me, and the door was cracked open as if it had been waiting for me to return home, though I had never seen the place before. And when I stepped inside, the living room was filled with photographs, on every surface each photo showing me at different ages, but standing in places I didn't remember visiting. And some photos showed me walking through this same town, while the people looked straight at me, as if in those moments I wasn't invisible. And I realized then that there had been times in my life I woke up unsettled without knowing why, and maybe it was because I had been here before without remembering. And the house groaned softly, like it was relieved to have me back. And on the coffee table sat a small notebook with my handwriting filling its pages with entries describing visits I couldn't recall, ending with one line written over and over saying, "Don't forget again." And the final page said, "If you forget, the town will remember for you." And at that moment, the door behind me slammed, and all the lights in the house flickered violently, as if urging me to stay or to run. I couldn't tell which. I bolted out of the house and back onto the street, where the sky had darkened into an unnatural deep blue that didn't look like night, but like something older, and the markings of my name all across the buildings glowed softly, as if they were breathing, and the sensation of being watched intensified until I couldn't tell whether the town was behind me or inside me. And I reached the edge of the road where I'd first entered, hoping I could cross back out. But the archway had changed the rusted metal, now freshly polished, with my name engraved along the top. And when I stepped toward it, the wind pushed back hard, like the town wasn't ready to release me. And I shouted that I didn't want to stay, that I didn't belong here. But the echo of my voice sounded doubled, like someone else was shouting with me in perfect sync. And I realized it was the older version of myself I'd seen in the diner reflection. And I felt her presence close the way you feel someone behind you, even without turning. And I refused to look, because some part of me knew seeing her fully would mean accepting something irreversible. And instead, I closed my eyes and ran through the archway with every ounce of strength I had. And the world seemed to rip sideways like fabric tearing before I crashed onto dirt and found myself back on the roadside beside my wrecked car, and the town was gone, as if it had never existed, except for the fact that my clothes were covered in dust from its streets, and my palms were stained with ink from the notebook I'd touched. And when the tow truck driver arrived, he asked if I was okay, saying he'd seen me standing there alone for almost an hour talking to myself. And when I asked if he'd seen a town just down the road, he frowned and said there was nothing for miles in either direction. And I wanted to believe him. But when I looked in my car's cracked side mirror, I saw faint writing across my cheek like a message I hadn't noticed before, spelled out in the same frantic handwriting from the town, saying you will return. And I wiped it away, but it smeared instead of disappearing. And even now, as I tell you this, my name keeps appearing in places I know I didn't put it. And sometimes, when I'm driving at night, I catch glimpses of that archway in my headlights, not always in the same place, but always waiting, always expecting me to come home again.